Hello, my name is Paul Shepherd. I'm one of the careers consultants at the University of Bolton, and today I'm going to be talking through a webinar on how to use social media for job hunting and for networking. Just to let you know, in terms of the slides, because of the configuration of my laptop, I can't do the slideshow format. So hopefully you can extend the picture on the screen so you can get it large enough to read. Okay, so what I'm going to be covering today are the three primary social media platforms in terms of looking for work. And for these, we would say they were LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook in no specific order, but we will be spending more time looking at LinkedIn today. I know there are other platforms. There are a whole host of other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, etc. But for the purposes of this webinar and to keep it down to about half an hour, we've decided just to focus on these three platforms. So in front of you, you can see the areas that I'm going to cover. So I'm not going to waste too much time reading to you from the slide, but these are the 6 or 7 areas that we're going to look at during the course of this webinar. And obviously you will be able to go back and watch again, or you might want to have your phone ready to take any pictures of any particular websites or resources that you might want to make a note of. So just to give you some context, as you can see here, the source is labelled at the bottom. The Excellent Prospects website has a really useful feature on getting a job using social media, and that's where I've taken these figures from. And you can see there really what these 4 main bullet points emphasize and reiterate is the amount of people who are now using social media for a wide range of career-related activity. And you can see that there's a large percentage of the largest employers who will use social media to find their graduate talent, because obviously it's a quick, easy and accessible way of doing that. And quite often it can be a free way of doing that as well. So that's just some context by way of introduction to this webinar. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about personal branding and then showing you an example of personal branding via social media platforms. Now, we know that not everybody likes to think of themselves as a personal brand, but it is absolutely the case that we are all our own personal brand. And one of the main ways in which people will see that personal brand and be first introduced to it is via social media platforms. So it is important in most sectors and industries. Why? Because a number of reasons. Potential employers are likely to look at your social media profiles, partly because you might actually say put your LinkedIn URL on your CV. There is an increased tendency for people to have integrated online profiles. So, for example, my LinkedIn and my Twitter accounts both have the username Paul Shepherd 27. So, you know, for consistency and for ease for me to remember as much as the people who are looking at my profiles. And also as well, it is an opportunity to actually show off your personality, put forward your ideas. And what I'm going to do now is actually show you a really good example of a LinkedIn profile, which has, I think, some really strong personal branding. So here we have Leona's profile. Leona de Sousa was one of our student employment champions over the last academic year. And she, over the course of the time that she's been with us, both as a student and as a student employment champion, has developed a really good, strong LinkedIn profile, as did many of the student employment champions. But you can see here, there's a nice smiley picture of Leona on her graduation, and she's got a nice colourful background image there relating to the sector that she wants to go into. She's got herself marketed as open to work, which is obviously good in terms of employers being able to see that she's looking for an opportunity. In terms of her contact information, she's got a nice shortened LinkedIn URL rather than the really long unwieldy one that LinkedIn will automatically generate for you. If you want to know how to do that, you can watch one of our LinkedIn workshops. LinkedIn parts 1 and 2, I think, will both show you how to do a shortened URL, or you can make an appointment with me or one of my colleagues, and we can show you how to do that. She's got over 500 connections, which is obviously a really impressive number for a student. And in terms of open to work, she's got her 5 job titles there, and this means that employers and recruiters can actually see the type of work that Leona is interested in, and hopefully that will attract employers to her LinkedIn profile. And then you can see here, in terms of the personal branding, she gets an opportunity to give a summary of herself, a bit like the personal profile on a CV. And there we've got some activity, and this is really useful in terms of personal branding. It gives Leona a chance to post about things that are important to her whilst sharing some colourful images and photographs, which is one of the real advantages of using LinkedIn, particularly for personal branding. And here we've then got her experience, which includes her skills that she's developed, and as well as her experience and a summary of them, she's got her education underneath, and that allows her to tell people what her overall grade is, licenses and certifications. She can highlight the skills that she's got, and as you can see here, people such as myself have then endorsed those skills. So this gives you a really good idea, I think, of how you can actually make the most of a LinkedIn profile to promote and develop your personal branding. So hopefully you will find that useful. We're often asked in the careers service, is LinkedIn important, or how important is it to have a LinkedIn profile? Well, I think if you look at these 4 bullet points on the screen, it will give you an idea. And this is not to say you have to have a LinkedIn profile, because of course it's absolutely optional, and you're the best judge of how useful it's going to be for you, whether you want to be there on social media, because we know that not everybody does. However, there is somewhere in the region of 35 million UK members of LinkedIn. It's an easy way to connect with people in your industry without actually having to go to face-to-face networking events. You can be recommended jobs based on your interests and the companies you follow, as well as the open to work facility. And it is actually expected by many employers and sectors now. And again, that's not to say that it's absolutely mandatory or essential, but a number of employers will hope and expect to see a LinkedIn profile from an applicant who is a student or recent graduate. So we're going to cover the key features. I've already talked about the first couple. I am actually going to show you how to make yourself open to work as well, but then we're going to cover those other areas today. So if I'm just going to move back now to LinkedIn. So here you can see that I'm on my profile page, and you can see that I'm open to work. Now, obviously, I'm in work already, and I'm not particularly looking for another job. So I need to change that by going to the open to work symbol. But here it gives you an example to see the different types of jobs that people can put on their profile. You can put up to 5 different jobs, and then you can make yourself visible to recruiters only or all LinkedIn members. And if you make yourself just visible to recruiters only, you should be able to save that. Click on the top left-hand button there, and you can see now the open to work symbol from my profile has moved. So, you know, if you want to be visible to everybody, that's absolutely fine. If you're actually in a job and you just want to be visible to potential recruiters and employers, then make sure it's just on the recruiters only setting. So the next thing I want to show you is how to look for jobs. So there are a number of ways of doing this, but the quickest and easiest way to do it is to obviously click on the jobs tab at the top of the platform. And then you can simply put in the job title that you're looking for. And then you can put in the city or town, or even a postcode that you're looking for. So let's just put in a postcode here. let's put in this postcode here, and then we can search. And you can see here it's coming up with 24 results, which is a very manageable number to actually look at, but sometimes it will come up with a lot more than that. So you can actually look by the distance, when it was posted, the experience level, salary, etc. You might even want to look at those that are just using the easy apply method, because that brings the number down to 9. And then with this, you can actually just click on the easy apply tab. You then put in a telephone number. We'll just make one up, obviously. And then here you can upload your CV, and then you can send it to the employer and it can be reviewed. So some employers are actually using the easy apply method. And you might find that's more used, particularly where there are shortages in the sector and they want people to apply, and to encourage more people to apply because they're perhaps not getting quite as many applicants as they're looking for. But there you can have a look at all the different types of opportunities and options to look for jobs. So hopefully you will find that particularly useful. So I now want to show you how to use companies, alumni, and groups. So if you wanted to look for a particular organisation, let's say the University of Bolton, and it does take a moment or two to come up, and then you can actually look at a couple of things here. You can look at the jobs that are available at the university. So you can see here, there's a doctoral student, which has only been advertised 5 hours ago at the time of recording this. And it will show you how to apply for the 2 different options on there. And again, a lecturer in nursing. So you can have a look at that, and then you can apply for that opportunity. So you can see there that that is useful to see for a particular organisation. Now, you can do other things with an organisation. It doesn't necessarily need to be just looking for jobs. You can also use the really useful alumni tool. So if you click on this, you've got a figure there of over 36,000 people who are connected to this university in one way or another on LinkedIn. So you want to get that number down to a much more manageable number. So say you're a midwifery student, that will come down to 41 if you put midwifery in there. You might want to put midwife, you might want to play about with the terms until you get a manageable number. And then you can see the people who are actually working at the Bolton NHS Foundation Trust. I'm not going to go down to show you these people, obviously data protection, but you could actually then connect with those people by sending a personalized connection request, telling that person why you want to connect with them. And once they've responded, you can go back to that person and ask them about potential opportunities within that organization. So as you can see, that can be a particularly useful way of finding companies and organizations and individual alumni as well. Now, another thing I want to show you, I'm putting up one of the tasks that I would normally get students to do in an interactive session. This is joining at least one group. So, you can put in a key term here, and then what we would suggest you do is join groups strategically. So the larger the group, the greater number of potential contacts. So let's have a look at an example of this. So what I've done here in the search tool is put in data analyst, and you can see here there are data analyst jobs that you can actually then look at, but also data analyst groups. And then if we look at this, you can see here there are some very big groups that you could join if this is your particular area of expertise. Over 500,000 people in these different groups. You join, you click on the join. It normally won't let you join immediately. You've got to wait for an administrator to admit you to that group. But then once you have been admitted to it, you have then got access to over 500,000 different people who are in or interested in the same industry and sector as you. So again, you can hopefully see how useful that can be for your career options. One of the other things I just want to show you as well is the recommendations tool. So if you actually go down towards the bottom of a profile, you can see on there that there will be a number of recommendations for some people. So you can see here, I've received a few recommendations recently. So I've received 6 different recommendations, and I've also given recommendations as well. So this, again, is really useful for people to be able to develop and promote their personal brand. Again, if you want to know more about how to do that, please attend one of our other LinkedIn workshops. But hopefully that's given you an overview of some of the really useful LinkedIn tools and resources that are good for job hunting, but also networking. So just to finish up on LinkedIn, I want to share some top tips with you. We've covered most of these as we've been going through the webinar, so I'm not going to dwell on all of these, but just to highlight a couple of points. There is no need to pay for a premium account. That's generally aimed at employers and recruiters who pay for that service to be able to target potential candidates. If you are open to work, make sure this is clear by making it visible to recruiters at least. Try to include some photos if you're posting, because again, that will get you noticed and be good for your personal brand. And check and update your profile regularly. So it can be quite annoying to see that a student is still registered and advertised as a student on LinkedIn when they actually have graduated. So it's useful for yourself to make sure that you have graduated, to make sure, that you are marked as graduated on LinkedIn. Okay. So I'm now going to move on to talk about Facebook a little bit. You can see here on the screen in front of you, you've got the Prospects Facebook page. I've already mentioned the Prospects website, a very well-known organisation in the world of higher education careers, particularly. So this is the example I'm going to use. In terms of Facebook, it's the second most popular platform at the time of delivering this webinar. Very similar number, 34 million to LinkedIn. And employers will sometimes look at candidate profiles to see whether they're a suitable fit for their particular company. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually just have a quick look at Facebook and how it can be useful for actually looking at particular elements of the platform. So here, in terms of prospects, you can actually see that they've got 37,000 likes and the same number of followers. You can see that they've got social media presence in terms of Twitter and Instagram. And you can see here they are posting on a fairly regular basis. So they posted about crafting a cover letter only yesterday at the time of recording. And again, Prospects has some really useful resources on things like cover letters and CVs. So again, it's worth checking out and perhaps following this particular page because it might be of particular interest and use to you. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is the Jobs in Bolton page. So this is a particular recruiter. So again, you can follow this organization, but you can also have a look at just the vacancies that they're posting. So you can see there's a stock controller, TK Maxx. When I was looking earlier today, somebody had posted vacancies in the NHS at the Bolton NHS Foundation Trust. So you can see here, there are a number of different opportunities that you can look at. And if you put Jobs in Bolton, it will come up with various different Facebook pages that relate to jobs in the Bolton area. So again, that's something that is particularly useful for you to be able to use and look at. And again, if you're applying for a job with an organization, have a look, put it into the search facility, and it's useful to see what they're doing in terms of social media, because you might even be asked a question about their social media platforms at an interview. So we're going to move on to the last of our 3 platforms, which is Twitter, which has obviously recently had a rebrand. We're yet to see how that's affected by Threads and whether Threads will be advertising any sort of career-related activity and whether it will be any good for looking for jobs and networking. But we certainly know that historically, Twitter has been a quite good resource for people who want to find out more about a particular organization, and perhaps jobs as well. Again, you can see that when we looked at these stats, it was over 23 million users. The figures for Twitter seem to be changing quite a lot at the moment. So obviously that could change by the time you're watching this, but it takes a more relaxed approach to social networking, where people can obviously use a limited number of characters to tweet and market opportunities and their organizations. Some top tips in terms of this: think about being as inventive as you can with your bio. So if you can have an interesting picture on your bio, maybe you could have the same picture that you use as your photo on LinkedIn, but also think about engaging with others in your industry and staying up to date with current affairs. There are lots of things that you can do with Twitter. And again, I'm going to show you 3 resources at the end of this webinar, and I would strongly encourage you to go and have a look at those resources to see how you might use the 3 different platforms, as well as the other platforms that we're not covering today. In terms of being proactive, I've mentioned some of this already, but you can link it to your LinkedIn profile. You can use various platforms now where you can bring your social media platforms together, and you can even schedule when you're actually going to send updates via those different platforms. Hashtags are obviously an essential part of Twitter. And then after the hashtag, you can put in the terminology that might help you find a job. So if you're looking for a job in media or London, or a graduate job or a fashion job, then obviously you would use that key terminology. It's also worth noting that some organizations, such as the BBC, will have a separate Twitter account for career-related opportunities with that particular organization. So again, that's something worth bearing in mind. So I'm now going to just show you 3 of my favorite resources. There'll be plenty of resources on the internet to do with job search and networking, but I particularly like and use these 3 when preparing this webinar. So I'm just going to briefly show you them. Okay, so I mentioned at the outset that I'd taken some of the figures from this resource, Social Media and Job Hunting, only produced in the last few weeks, July 2023 at the time of recording. Some really interesting statistics, some of which I've included on these slides and in this webinar already. The importance of a personal brand, how to create a LinkedIn profile. And again, we've got a separate workshop on that if you want to attend it. How to look for jobs on both Facebook and Twitter. And again, social media for networking. So it's not just about finding jobs, it's also about more broadly networking as well. Another one of the resources I really like is Save the Student website, which tends to have some really useful information. It has some good jobs pages on there as well. And again, I'm not going to run through all of these because I've covered many of them today, but I just want to make sure you draw your attention to a couple of things. Editing the privacy settings on your social media is particularly important, particularly for Facebook, I would say, but for all of the social media platforms, it's really important to do that. Showing your personality online can be useful. So, you know, it's okay to show yourself having fun and enjoying your studies and your work on social media platforms. Here, the importance of potentially meeting people face to face where appropriate, the importance of joining groups, which we've already covered today. I like this one, number 10, avoid using cliched buzzwords. So things like results-driven, team player, passionate, they tend to be overused on CVs and social media platforms. So try and be a little bit more original if you can. Make sure you keep your profiles updated, and you can make more creative online profiles. So it's not just limited to LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. There's obviously other platforms as well. Now, this last one is taken from the Guardian's website. Actually, just bear with me. Okay. So this is over 2 years ago, but it is still a really useful feature. And again, I've taken some of the material from this for today's workshop. Unfortunately, I am having a slight problem with this, a slight technical issue, but you can see here, if I just go through it quickly, how to use social media in your job search. Again, separate sections on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, and then some really useful sections at the bottom on the benefits of using social media in your job search, and a summary of our top tips, which actually I've used some of these for my summary as well. So I'm going to move on from this quite quickly because I'm worried I'm going to lose this page again because it seems to be having a bit of a technical issue at the moment. So there you have the resources, which I've already shown you. And now I'm going to move on to the penultimate slide, which is the top tips. So again, some of these have been covered already, but ensure your profiles state that you're actively job seeking, because some profiles you look at suggest the person is in work already when actually they're looking for work. So you could say, aspiring project manager or project management graduate, rather than saying that you are actually a project manager, which may or may not be the truth, but you need to be truthful on your profiles. Using keywords and skills so that recruiters can find you when they're searching for suitable candidates and clients. Make sure that you are following any companies or organizations you particularly want to work for. Join groups where appropriate. You can see some of the groups we've looked at today have in excess of 500,000 people, so you can actually keep updated with your particular sector. You can initiate conversations with people if you choose to do so, but make sure you keep your profile separate. So for example, on Twitter particularly, if you want one that's a bit more personal, then it's a good idea to have two separate Twitter accounts, one that's personal and one that's more professional. And again, the source for several of these top tips is here as the Guardian website, which I just showed you a moment ago. So the only thing that remains for me to do is to remind you of the details of the careers service. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these already, but if not, there's our telephone number. If you want to come into the help desk and make an appointment, you can do so face-to-face, or you can ring that number and ask for an appointment with a particular careers advisor, or just the next available appointment that suits you. And the easiest way to make an appointment is by using Student Hub. So the Student Hub details are on this slide here. And if you go on to the relevant pages, you can just set up an appointment very quickly and easily. And I'm sure many of you know how to do that already. Any problems, you can just email the generic email address there, which is the Student Hub one, or you can email me directly with any questions or comments you have about this webinar. But other than that, it just remains for me to say, thank you very much for attending this session today, and we wish you all the best with your future. Yes, just to wish you all the best with your future endeavours in terms of looking for jobs using social media, whether it to look for actual jobs or to network. And again, hopefully we'll see some of you in the not too distant future for appointments or at workshops, etc. Otherwise, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this workshop.